Welcome YouTubers to a new low. Beneath this moldy moving engines ever made, at least in North America. I can't speak for other countries. But this engine has two things synonymous with it. One, it's single-handedly responsible for creating the lemon law in the US. And two, this is my opinion, is also single-handedly responsible for making sure that diesel is never popular in the United States. By saying that, you probably can guess what it is. It's the Oldsmobile 350 diesel. Behold its majesty. So, I can tell you what I know about these motors, just so people can tell me I am wrong in the comments. So, let's get started. First of all, the common thing that everyone says is that this was originally a gasoline engine that was basically hacked into a diesel engine, and they're correct. So this was originally an Oldsmobile gas 350, like not this particular engine, this was always diesel. But the reason this exists is during the 70s when everything started to really suck, especially fuel prices, EPA, things of that nature, companies were trying to figure out a way to basically still produce cars. And you had two options. You could either create a small, compact four-cylinder, which was kind of junky compared to what the rest of the world already had.
1976 Chevrolet Chevette. When the gas crunch happened, all the American manufacturers had to do something. And they were freaking out, we gotta do something! And here it is. This is the solution. It's something.
Or the other option is you put a diesel on something. So from my understanding, GM had already been experimenting with using someone else's diesels, like Nissan diesels, Mercedes diesels at the time, but diesels back then weren't that powerful. Neither is this, by the way. But the issue was that nothing could really move all the boats that GM made, with the exception of the small cars. So they figured out that they were just going to make their own diesel engine, so then they could make their full-size like B-bodies and mid-size G-bodies, which are considered big by today's standards, big heavy American boats, get good fuel economy. And in my opinion, it was also probably a way around the emission standards, because I'm pretty sure at this time period they didn't really care about diesel, so they could probably do whatever they wanted with these, not have to worry about catalytic converters and other doodads. So what they did was the GM determined that the Oldsmobile V8 was, I guess, the best option. It was something about the metallurgy of the block or something. So it won, really for that reason alone. So here's what they did. Instead of spark plugs, obviously, you have injectors and then glow plugs. Pretty much all the accessories and stuff are interchangeable with the gas engine. The intake manifold is actually in two halves. There's one there and one there. It's open in the middle where the lifter valley would be, because there's an injection pump just there. Then you have this open plenum, just, you know, sucks in all the goodness. To keep up with, I was saying, its trend of just being a gas engine made diesel, the vacuum pump where the distributor used to be, and this supplies like your vacuum to your power brake, not your power brakes, this thing should have Hydro Boost, but this would be your other vacuum accessories in the car, like your climate control, etc. Because most GMs during this time period, all the HVAC, like the vents, everything's powered off vacuum. So that's where that would come in. It uses a BOP, bolt pattern transmission, so Buick Olds Pontiac, which is different than Chevy, whatever. And I mean, really, there's not too much else to say about it. But here's where it gets more complicated. When these motors came out, they were absolutely terrible. Even though GM said that they had tested them pretty extensively, they had all kind of problems. The biggest issues is that basically the bolts in the heads and the mains could not basically hold up to the combustion pressures of the diesel. So the threads were not tapped far enough into the block, and the bolts weren't strong enough or whatever. So they tended to lift the heads, below head gaskets, Sometimes they'd even crack the head bolts in half. They'd crack the main bolts in half. The cars didn't come with a water separator, so when you got water in the fuel, your car wouldn't run. People didn't know what to do. People weren't familiar with diesels yet. One of the other issues with not being familiar with diesels is that when people would take these to their regular mechanics, people didn't really know how to work on them. They ended up putting this regular, whatever, 1030 motor oil in them and wiping the bearings out instead of diesel oil. There was a lot of other issues like that too, just not keeping up on the maintenance properly. So to a point, they got kind of a bad rap. It wasn't completely their fault, but there was some issues. And that's where we come to this motor. This is, as you can see there, it is a Goodwrench replacement engine. So this was a crate motor. This was most likely put in one of the cars that came with the original 5.7 diesel under warranty. And this is what's referred to as a DX block. And this was the fix for a lot of the issues. The threads were improved. It has a different style injector, some other things. The block has extra webbing. Like basically just everything was made stronger that was an issue. It has a bigger oil pan, whatever. So by the end of production, which was by the mid 80s, it was my understanding they had pretty much everything figured out. So this engine should be dialed, but we'll see about that. So that brings us to the obvious question of, why do I have this? Where did I get it? Why do I do these things? These are questions I often ask myself at night. But in this case, I was looking for a diesel to swap one of my cars, which we'll get to that in a bit. And I was trying to find a 6.2, which is the engine that came in all the pickup trucks in the 80s. Not all of them. These came pickup trucks, by the way, for a year or two. But the actual good motor that didn't have issues. And as most things happen, the second that I wanted one, all of them vanished from existence. So I had heard from word of mouth where this motor was. And shockingly, I'm the only person that wanted it. And the story that I got was that this motor was purchased by the man's father, who had a Cadillac that was originally a diesel, and at some point it had a gas motor swapped into it, which was common with these. A lot of these cars and trucks that had these 5.7 diesels, people were so pissed off at them that they would just end up either having the dealer or a shop or someone put a gas Oldsmobile motor in it, which would bolt right in. It's like a gas 307 or a 350, whatever. So that happened to a lot of the vehicles, especially the trucks. And so the guy had one of these Cadillacs, and for some reason he wanted to be numbers matching and wanted to put the diesel back in it. And for whatever reason, that never occurred. So the story I got is that this is supposed to be a low mileage, replacement engine, and it's the good engine. So that's what I have. So I'm gonna try and get it running on the floor because that's the obvious thing to do. And let's see how that goes. So I've actually been tinkering with this for the last few nights. Sorry to have you miss out on all that action. Did exciting things like change the oil. So I'm sorry if you missed me draining used motor oil out of the engine. But I also put a starter on it because this engine did not come with any starters or accessories, which is handy. And I put new glow plugs in it. But first what I did was I pulled all the glow plugs out and I cranked the motor over for a bit to make sure it was free, because that relieved the compression. And it whips over pretty good. And also it gets oil pressure. So I'll show you there. Let me just use my ignition switch here. Took a second because it's only on the starter, but it builds 40 PSI off the starter. I'd say that's pretty good. So obviously it has compression. It's my understanding that these engines, like most indirect injected diesels, are very reliant on the glow plugs to start. So knowing that, I'm still gonna try and start it without the glow plugs. So here's my fuel system. I thought I had a clickety-clack pump, so I didn't buy one on the way home from work. Turns out I don't. So we got this lawnmower tank. Hopefully that'll do. Fuel line goes down. These have a mechanical fuel pump, just like a carbureted gas engine would have. It's probably the same fuel pump. That's the lift pump out of the tank. And then it would have has a hard line, which in this case was smashed from when they pulled the motor. and it goes up to this canister fuel or box fuel filter, and then through here into the back of the pump. So I just ran this hose to the old feed line into the filter, and this is a return that fuel will spray out of. And then this blue wire is hooked to the fuel solenoid on the pump. This is what actually like opens and closes the fuel. There's also another wire on here, which I believe, from my understanding, is some kind of like enrichment solenoid, or just when it's a cold start, this enriches it. And there's also a high idle solenoid here. Neither of those I'm going to pay any attention to right now. So let me try and get some fuel into this thing, and we'll see if it runs. Now we also get the excitement to see if this lawnmower tank leaks. You can't see it, but you should be really impressed by me. I bought clear diesel fuel. Okay, so what we're going to try and do here is I'm going to turn on my ignition switch, which is my blue fuel cut solenoid wire. Yep, it clicks. Fun fact, I'm already leaking fuel out of a few injectors, so that's kind of weird, because this hasn't had fuel in it in probably 10 or 20 years. But that's diesels for you. Okay, so I have all the injectors cracked. Let's see what happens when I crank it. Apparently nothing. So I really think that we might need an actual fuel pump pushing into the injection pump. But I'm gonna try it some more anyway. Let's put a booster pack on it here for some more RPM. So I decided to try it, and somehow the mechanical fuel pump, which is physically smashed probably by a forklift, actually works. I actually just plumb the lines up, got some fittings, and it actually pumps fuel. So maybe it'll like that better. Nope, I'm still not really getting any fuel out of the injectors. Interesting. Well, I got overly cocky, I guess, and this motor went and bit me in the ass. So as you can see, I'm in the injector pump now. I wanted to verify that the fuel cutoff solenoid is working, which it is. It's electric, and under this lid, that thing there just goes like that. And when it does that, it moves this black rod from that position to that position. It allows fuel in. The only thing is it's not doing that. Well, actually, it might be, but fuel's not coming out. Fuel's going in. I pulled this whole line off, made sure fuel's getting right to here. But that is not fuel in there. That's PB Blaster. I filled it up to try and, I don't know, do nothing. But this should be filling with fuel, and obviously there should be fuel coming out of these ports going to the injectors, and there is not. So I was doing some reading. Turns out they use this same, at least a variant of this pump, on 6.2 and 6.5 Chevys, and on 6.9 and 7.3 IDI Fords. All use this pump. And apparently they are very prone to gumming up and sticking when they sit. And I have no idea how long this motor sat, but there's two pistons or plungers in there that are probably gummed up and not letting the fuel through. So I guess I'm doing what the one thing was I did not want to do, and it's pulling the pump off this motor and maybe going inside of it. Pretty much everything I've read, it said, do not try and go inside these yourself. You can't do it. So I guess I'm just going to do that now. Oh, I'm in it now. So I didn't show me taking this apart or removing it because I'm sure I didn't do it right, like any of it. But Facebook and Google were both right. I asked on the Oldsmobile Diesel Facebook page, and there's two of them. And the unanimous decision was that these little plungers were frozen. And they were. They no longer are. Now I can move them freely. But these are what actually squeeze together. There's one on each side here. And when it's time for diesel things, these rollers squish them, and then that pushes the fuel out whatever nozzle it's lined up with here. So yeah, those were frozen. So I am going to try cleaning everything because some of this stuff was kind of funky. I don't know if there's anything left here, but there was a bunch of like goo on this and stuff that I cleaned off. So we'll see what happens. I don't really know what I'm doing, and from my understanding, you shouldn't take one of these apart even if you have some idea of what you're doing. But here we are. So we'll see if the motor's scrapped now. So there's the pump that we'll call rebuilt. So I didn't show it because I had no idea what I was doing. I took it apart and put it back together a couple times, and probably wrong, and definitely used tools that had no reason to be near an injection pump. But it seems it was successful. I'm now getting fuel in this chamber when it cranks, and watch this if it still feels like working. Get my ignition switch here. Look at that, fuel. So I think if I hook up the lines now, I'm not going to say it'll start, but there should be fuel going to the injectors. And I'm guessing now probably the injectors are going to be the next problem. Or the fact that I probably completely did that wrong, and it's just going to run away when I started with the lines on it. Okay, everything is back together, and now we're back at the step we were like 2 days ago of bleeding out the injectors. There's fuel coming out of the back of the pump, so in theory there has to be fuel at the injectors now, right? Well, we'll see. Okay, the fuel solenoid's on. Okay, well I had fuel on this side, so I'm going to assume, yeah, there's fuel on this side too. Look at that. That's some progress. Okay, all the injectors are tight again. Okay. Just bracing that a little bit for the slim chance this thing actually starts. But Okay, fuel solenoid is still hooked up. Should have fuel now. Let's see what happens. We got a bunch of smoke. Guess I'll cave in and use the glow plugs. I already put the wires on because I kind of saw this coming. Ooh, the wires in the flywheel, that's probably good. Okay. Let's see if this light's on fire. Ooh, sparks. 5 seconds, let's try. Sounds like sizzling bacon in the engine. Guess that means they're working. I guess the glow plugs are pretty necessary. Okay, so why didn't it stay running? A little more glow plug for a good time. Okay, what's the problem now? Okay. Okay, what, you just fire once, I guess? Okay. Once again, why doesn't it stay running? Does not want to idle. Not really sure why. But I guess it is a good start that it runs. slowly rubbing on a piece of wood and starting the wood on fire. So I figured I'd turn it off, but the fuel cutoff works, so that's nice.
So there's updates. It's been probably a month because I got mad and stopped working on it. But I'm back on it now. So where I left off, the engine would still not idle. I took the pump off and checked things on it a few more times, and it still would do the exact same thing. So I wanted to check to make sure I wasn't just going down. I didn't want to assume the pump was the problem and it was actually something else. So when I got this engine, I may or may not have noted that a bunch of the cover bolts were missing. Like there was just enough to hold the water pump and the cover on, and every other bolt was missing. So I decided if someone had probably been in there, I should probably check it out. So at first, I thought I found the smoking gun because on most old engines, when you time your timing chain, you take dot here and dot here, which I've shown in yellow, and you line them up right here, and then you're at top dead center. And when I did that, I noticed that the injection pump was not in time. So after some reading in the ancient scrolls on this motor, it turns out that when you line the dots up, cylinder number 1 is not at top dead center. Cylinder 6 is, and the pump is not timed. So the actual top dead center for cylinder 1 is crank up, timing gear up. Then there's a little hole in there that you can line up the gear that drives the injection pump. And now this is proper. They're neither rocker or engaged. I have no idea what that noise is. And that'd be hard to see, but there is a drive in there which currently is straight up and down, and it's actually offset to the left a little bit. So that means that right now the motor is where it should be to drop the pump in. So while I'm at it, I'm cleaning it and regasketing it and such. The good news is this actually definitely is a super low mileage motor, because check out the inside. And see if you can see the crank goodness here or not. Like there isn't even any oil staining on this yet. So this thing has like no mileage on it, which is good. I mean, it's the worst engine ever made, but at least I have a good one of them. So also while I had it apart, I decided to just do the right thing, and I'm putting on the rear wheel drive oil pan, because this one had a front wheel drive oil pan, which is mad deep. I was just going to say whatever and run this anyway and bottom it out. But now that I already have a part, I guess I'll just put the right oil pan on it. So we're back at it here. I am going to, well, first I'm going to clean this and regasket it and stuff. Then I'm going to reassemble the injection pump for probably the 60th time. Just keep putting it together the same way and expect a different result, I guess. But we'll see what happens in a bit. So I started reassembling stuff here. Timing covers on, water pumps on, balancers on. Just before I put the oil pan on, I wanted to show you that this is actually like pretty clean inside. I mean, I didn't really clean this. I just dusted the outside edge here with some brake clean to get ready for the gasket. I put the rear wheel drive oil pump pickup on because the front wheel drive one's like up here. And then I have the rear wheel drive pan, which just looks like a regular rear wheel drive oil pan. Fun fact, I probably didn't mention yet, I have another motor. That one I'm using for parts. I got that from Easy Pull, local junkyard. Corey happened to be there and spotted this, and I went up on the weekend and had them pull it. They severely damaged my wallet for this stupid thing because of the diesel. It was a premium engine. It was in a Monte Carlo. and it was seized. But I shouldn't have seized it, but I don't want to, I don't want to get it running. I don't have another one, it'll be a problem. I have enough to worry about. But I needed the accessories and stuff for this motor because it came with nothing. So I got all the appropriate accessories, you know, the alternator, power steering pump. I got the right manifolds because the manifolds are different. I got the rear wheel drive oil pan I've already talked about. Fun thing is though, because of the junkyard, instead of draining the oil, they just pounded a hole right next to it. So I had to weld that up, and I put some JB weld on as a little extra reassurance to hopefully seal that. But now I'm going to plop that on, and then the motor will be pretty much sealed up except for the valve covers and accessories. A little bit more about this unit quick. This is the junkyard engine. Originally I thought this was a regular, like an original diesel, just a D block. But once I spun it upside down, this is actually another DX block. So I have two DX blocks. This one is actually pretty clean too. But when I got it, when I pulled the drain plug, I drained about 4 gallons of water out of it. And you can see it's kind of rusty there and over there and such. I got it broke free, and it does spin freely now. So I mean, maybe you have a spare block or whatever. I think it did run. I just think the car got scrapped because, you know, some old guy died, and that's what happens when old guys that die, they have to get rid of their cars. The family just scraps everything. Other note is this has the earlier injectors. This one actually has return lines to go on here, and it's really annoying. This one has the newer style injectors. I think, I'm going to say this wrong, but I think these are the poppet injectors, and those are like the pencil injectors. Maybe, or I'm backwards, or totally wrong. But these don't need return lines, so that's a lot less headache. But supposedly the other injectors make more horsepower. So there's more stuff you didn't want to know about. So good news. It still doesn't run, but now it's painted. So I'm doing important work here. But anyway, I got all the rear wheel drive accessories swapped onto it. Got a different fuel pump because the old one was smashed. I have a timing marker now, even though I have no way to time this because it requires some obsolete thing that goes in the injector that goes to a timing light, which I'm sure none exist anymore. Oh, let's see what else here. I oversprayed on some shit. This is the closest engine paint I could find to what color I think this is supposed to be. The paint that was kind of left on it when I cleaned it up was kind of like a silverish blue. And I saw nothing about an Oldsmobile blue anywhere. But I found this stuff on Amazon. VHT, it is titanium silver. I don't know, it's similar. It's a little less blue than I think what was on there, but whatever. I guess I'm gonna lose some points at Barrett-Jackson, I guess, or whatever. So I think I may have found the problem here. First of all, I'm shocked that my face didn't melt off like in Raiders of the Lost Ark when I opened up an injection pump right in front of my own eyes. But, so, they use this injection pump on pretty much everything that was diesel in the 70s and 80s that was American. It's on tractors, combines, bulldozers, loaders, cars, trucks, whatever. Ford 7.3s, Ford 6.9, Chevy 6.2, 6.5s, like it's a pretty standard pump. They just vary how many outputs it has and, you know, the metering and all that of how much fuel it delivers. So because of that, because it fits a lot of things, the pump can rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise and still work. It's kind of universal. So this ring here, it might be hard to see. You look right here, there it is. There's a rotation arrow. And this side, there we go, has the other rotation. So I have found a lot of conflicting information depending what website I go on, what YouTube video I watch, on rebuilding these pumps. And I believe I had that ring on backwards. This is supposed to be a clockwise pump. From my understanding, if you look at the end, and this end faces the rear of the engine, and when I watch it, it pumps fuel in a clockwise manner. It goes around in a circle like that. So I had it going that direction, thinking that, you know, the pump spins this way. And when I just assembled it, again, and I'm double checking everything, I checked the engine timing, I checked there's little timing marks in the side here, there's timing marks in this rod, you see there's a dot in there that has to line up and a dot in here, right there. And when I assembled it all and checked on the engine, the timing mark was not in that window, it was on the other side of the pump. So I believe I had this swapped, and that means that the engine was kind of running 180 out. Not really, but kind of. Like the pump wasn't firing. The pump wasn't firing when the combustion event should have been happening, if my theory here is right. So I'm going to try swapping that around. Everyone says that it cannot run backwards, like you cannot run an injection pump backwards. But a couple episodes ago on the Diesel Creek YouTube channel, he was messing with the deuce and a half, and it was pretty much the exact thing. There was something in the pump that was actually 180 out, and the truck still ran, but ran like shit. So that's kind of what I have going on here. So I'm going to put this the way I now think it should go, make all the timing marks line up, and we're just going to hope for the best. I got the pump back on. I got the intake plenum back on. I figured I have to run that because it has EGR ports in it. It's going to like suck on its own exhaust if I don't do that. It probably won't like that. I got the lines back on. I already have it bled up to here, to the filter. That's got to bleed into the pump now. I have the wires hooked up and such. I put a clear return line on it so I can see if fuel's returning. I correct my statement on the pump. From what I can tell, I did not have that cam plate in backwards, the clockwise versus non-clockwise rotation cam plate. The piece that goes on top of that, which is the cage that retains the governor weights and has the idle plastic ring that self-destructs and eats the pumps up. I think I had that on backwards, which then caused me to time the pump backwards. So that probably makes no sense, but it doesn't to me either. So I put the cam plate back in the way it was, but switched that other plate, and we're just going to hope for the best. And everything is supposedly timed, so we can see if it's happy now or not. I just got to bleed out the injectors, and we'll see if it starts, or if it runs away, or whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Okay, I calmed down, and I think it was just an issue if I still had air in the lines. Simple mistake. So, we're going to give it another try here. I put the exhaust manifolds on so my hands stop getting burned by the open exhaust ports. But, maybe it'll run now. Guess we'll see. I think soon we're going to find out how to do a gas conversion, these blocks that people do, if this doesn't work. But let's see what's going on here. Let me turn the injection pump on. Click. That did something. Then I have some various wires here. And let's see what happens. Cranking much better. I'm growing tired of the traditional glow plugs here, and I'm going to use some glow plugs and compression in a can. yourself, hey, that still runs like shit. And you're right, it does. But it does almost idle. It's much closer. It doesn't do that thing where it starts billowing black smoke and hopping all over the place. It starts misfiring, but I think I know the culprit of that. Put this clear return line on, as you can see, there's still quite a lot of air getting introduced in the system. I don't think it's the injection pump. Now keep in mind, I don't know a lot about diesels, but that entire cavity is pressurized by the delivery pump, I believe, which is in there. And yes, and the new fuel pump, off the junkyard engine, I'm not entirely convinced that this isn't like sucking air around this seam. I didn't really feel like putting a clear feed line on it, because the whole thing is that when I put this in a vehicle, I'm going to have to completely address any kind of air leaks in the fuel system completely from scratch. So there's no real point fixing them now and then just having to deal with new ones again later. I might as well just deal with all the air, fuel, leaking issues once it's installed in the car. But as you can see, there's quite a bit coming up there. And I am assuming it is either still trapped air in the system or that pump, or somehow it's sucking air doing one of these connections, but it doesn't seem to be. But for the most part, it idles. I think it could use a little bit more advance in the pump, but it's not too bad. By the way, look at these just complete abominations for exhaust manifolds this thing has. Driver's side manifold goes over into the other passenger side manifold there, then it does a big hoop, then the exhaust goes straight down. So that's, interesting. Well, it only took like 6 months, but I kind of made the engine run. So, nice, easy cold start there. That's going to be about it for the engine on the stand, starting in the garage. Next, I'm going to be swapping it into a car. Yes, I'm going to the next step of stupid. I already have a car this is going in, so I did actually point to buying this engine. So hopefully, once I get it in the car and get a cooling system on it where I can run it longer in an actual permanent fuel system, like maybe with an electric lift pump, then I'll be able to get it running, good, and be able to enjoy all its smooth power and economy. So hopefully you'll be seeing that sometime in the next 5 to 10 years.